Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Black Soul Music Experience Podcast. I'm your DJ and host, Sam Wilson Jr., and I'm here to bring you the history genre of black music: gospel, jazz, blues, old school classic soul, old school hip hop, today's hip hop and R&B, Caribbean, Latin, Afrobeat, Afro-Latina, blue-eyed soul, disco, go-go, line dances, and the Lost 45s. So come with me as I take you on to a trip to the history destination genre of black music, right now on the Black Soul Music Experience Podcast. Welcome to the Black Soul Music Experience. I'm Sam Wilson Jr., and I have a special guest on my show. This guy that I'm about to introduce is a singer, producer, and founder of his own production company called Royal Bloodline. Please help me welcome to the Black Soul Music Experience Podcast, ladies and gentlemen, Rameses. Hey, Rameses, how are you?
I am fantastic. I'm blessed to be here. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Welcome to my podcast. It's a pleasure to have you here. And as I try to reach out to independent artists who is not on the major record labels or were on the major record labels. So we always try to do creative control, always collaborate with any recording artist that they want to collaborate with without any record producers dictating to them what
Yeah,
can't they
yeah,
do, what do the other song, or what can't they do. So
right.
I'm very delighted to have you here on my podcast, and we're going to talk about everything that you're doing. So,
Wow.
yes, so America doesn't know who you are, the world doesn't know who you are, and this is my first time interviewing you. So,
Right.
without further ado, let us begin. Now, where were you born?
First off, I was born in Grand Rapids, Michigan, a beautiful city, born and raised for most of my life. Small period of time in which I was in Battle Creek, Michigan, but as far as born and raised, the beautiful city of GR 616, Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Okay, so how far is Grand Rapids, Michigan from Detroit? Because I do know that Grand Rapids, Michigan is the home of the barge.
Right. Wow, wow. That's that. Very few people actually know that. Um, so Detroit is about 2.5 hours away. Now, if my dad was driving, probably like an hour 45, depending on what roads he's taking. But on average, it's about 2 hours and 30 minutes out.
Hmm.
Of which actually me and my family did commute back and forth quite some time to Detroit. So it is a doable drive. It's definitely it's not a bad drive.
Okay. Now, speaking of that, were your parents in the music industry or did they had 9 to 5 day jobs?
So they weren't in the music industry. However, they were in ministry for quite some time. So as my father being a pastor, you do come in contact with a lot of musical, especially in the black church, a lot of musical legends and a lot of you do make a lot of musical connections. However, after they had transitioned out of ministry and kind of took time to focus on themselves, they did end up going into the 9 to 5, into the 9 to 5 realm. But they were never in the music industry, but they were always heavily in the ministry, teaching the word and such.
Okay. Now, which high school did you go to?
I went to Wyoming High School. Wyoming, the home of the Wolves, you know what I'm saying? It's right off of 28th Street, the one of the biggest streets in my city, That's where I had went to. Only did about I did around like track and field when I was there. Um, yeah, beautiful school, beautiful school.
And which college did you go to?
I went to Davenport University, which is in that same similar. It's in the same Grand Rapids area. It's not too far out. Kept tuition low. That definitely kept the tuition low.
And what was your major in college?
So my major, when I originally had went into college, I had the idea that I had wanted to focus on IT, as far as like computers, software engineering and such. And then when I got there, even though I realized that IT was something that I was still interested in, I realized that the teacher, the teaching process and the curriculum wasn't necessarily for me. So I switched it to business administration and that was for the rest of my college career.
Now, who did you want it to be when you grow up?
Oh man, that is a loaded question. So one of I guess this is a common answer, but I have to say it. I had this undying dream of even touching some of the the levels that Michael Jackson uh, was on. That was someone who influenced a lot of my musical aspirations simply because out of everything that I do now when it comes to music production, dancing was something that actually came much before anything. My mother was a dancer herself. My mother was a praise team dancer herself. So for long periods of times, like I would be in dance studios watching my mom create choreography. And before the passing of Mike, this is during from like I would like 1 to 9. I would watch Michael often. I would watch Michael all the time, trying to mimic his moves, and this led to me doing dance competitions in middle school, and I was, just running around. You can never sit me down. To this day, you can't sit me down. So Michael Jackson was definitely from child up was someone who I definitely held at a high regard. Someone I definitely wanted to be.
Now, you and your brothers were in a gospel choir, and if so, what was the name of the church that you belonged to? And your father was the pastor. What was the name of the church that y'all belonged to?
To answer your second question first, the name of the church was called Freedom Faith Worship Center. It was actually in Battle Creek, the second city that I had mentioned I had grew up in. And he was there for about 14 years. He passed there for about 14 years. Now, me and my brothers, because there's three of us in total, one, two, three, and with me being the oldest, we were never part of a choir. Our church was kind of new and small to the point where we couldn't really put together a choir. However, me and my brothers were always part of the music side of the church. For instance, like my brother was always a musician, so he was either the drummer or the pianist, and I was either a guitarist for a small period of time, and for majority time I was the sound engineer. So I was the one who was making sure like all of the music was sounding correctly. I was making sure aux and each mic is up. If someone's off key for the week, sometimes I would turn them down, put others up a little bit more, making sure music is all blended together in the right way. So that was more so me and my brother's role, and so we weren't in a choir. But I wish we had a choir. If we had a choir, I would have joined the choir. But we were just more so on the stage in that aspect, in music aspect.
Now, was being a singer your calling?
I 100% believe. I mean, yes, I would say singing specifically, but I also say a musician in any form of fashion was 100% to be my calling. Simply based off the fact that um, my whole family is musically inclined. Like I got an instrument in the back. I don't even know that. I got a piano, got a guitar in the back. My dad um, is musically inclined. My grandfather's he was an organist. Dude, he is still an organist at his church right now. Um, I knew for a fact that music was always going to be my direction in life because it has been for so many men and women in my family. Um, and I also think it's very important to choose a form of art to express yourself, even if you don't. Like, even if you do have, like a regular 9 to 5, like I feel like you should always have some sort of musical outlet to let your soul speak, because that's what it is. When you are take part in music, you are allowing soul to flow through this body and create magic, quite literally. So yeah, to answer your question, yes, it was 100% my calling.
Now, growing up, who were some of your favorite singers?
Whew, man. Okay, so we can go down this list all day. So as far as there was really kind of two sections of my life. The first half being I was only allowed to listen to gospel music for quite some time. So I say the number one person who comes to mind as far as my musical aspirations, it was his name is Molly Music. Molly Music, his his chord progressions and the way how he maneuvers certain keys in the R&B realm is very R&B and gospel realm specifically. It was second to none. He showed me certain kinds of music that I wasn't too familiar with at the time. So he was a definitely heavy hitter. Secondly, I would say Tam LeMan. Tam LeMan, the way how she would change the frequency of a room simply with her voice. Her voice was so powerful. There's a very powerful aspect to her voice. And then thirdly, Michael Jackson. Even though he wasn't a gospel artist, it was Michael Jackson. You know what I'm saying? Down the list. So those are top. Like as far as gospel plus Mike, that's who I looked up to.
Now, who were your musical influences that had inspired you to sing?
So my musical influence. So now we're talking kind of that second part of my life where I started to view music outside of the gospel realm and taking different types of aspects. So as a rapper, also myself, one huge person that I had took aspiration from was Lil Wayne. He had a lot of like big I don't care energy, and the concept of him being able to step on the game the way he did at so young and with lyricism that made your brain think. That's one thing that I fell in love with, the concept of lyrics having to make you pause, sit, and decipher what they really mean by something. You know what I'm saying? So
Mhm.
Lil Wayne, he was big. Like when I first had got into secular music, that was kind of when Wayne was kind of on his, I want to say like tail end of his takeover era, where it was just him as a rapper. And then you have Kendrick Lamar. Uh, his dedication and his patience and his execution of his music, and how much he pays attention to detail is something that I aspire a lot, a lot, because that shows me discipline. Like I feel like is a perfect aspect of what happens when music and discipline comes together. Thirdly, I would say Tupac. Tupac specific. So out of all the legends that we can go down the list, you know what I'm saying? You got Rakim, you know what I'm saying? You got all these old, you got Biggie, you got 50, you got all these big ones. Out of all of them, one thing that I appreciate about Tupac specifically is he was never afraid to tell the struggles and the mindset that sometimes was negative of the black man in this society. Like he was very revolutionist in his music, which leads me also back to Kendrick, because Kendrick is also very revolutionist as well. And so him talking about how the system ain't built for us and protecting the black woman and making sure we protecting our brothers, all that wrapped into music and him being an icon, him being able to help out so many people while the way that he did just by speaking out, huge influences. And then you have BB King. I'm a
Mhm.
guitarist, right? So there's very, 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 very few people who can really touch the magnificence of who BB King was and the legacy that he had put down. There was this video that I was watching not too long ago, actually, and BB King, he's on stage and he's playing the guitar, and the string pops. Like the string, like it pops. So normally, like guitarists is like either they'll freak out or there'll be like a small pause, into BB King is still going. He's still singing. He's still singing, and he's singing this song as he's putting on the string of the guitar, and he continues to play it like nothing happened. After I seen that video, me as a guitarist, like I was humbled. I'm not gonna like I was severely humbled because very few people have that talent. So I mean, we can keep on going down the list, but those were some huge. Those are some huge aspirations of who I would like inspired me.
Right. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Tupac because I've seen a few of his videos. Many people say like negativity, but when he has some positive stuff like the song "Brenda's Got a Baby" and the
Yeah,
one that I like, "Dear Mama,"
dear
in
my
time
yeah,
for
that was a big
Mother's
one.
Day because it tells you the story about it. And he wrote that song while he was in prison, and this was something that he needed to send a message out to, and that was something he would play. The radio stations will play it every day, and not just only on Mother's Day, but every day too.
Right? He was able to make that type of impact simply by saying what he needed to say, and that shows you the power of words. That really shows you the power of words because those types of songs are needed, especially in our community. So,
Right. Let's get back to the other question for a minute. What do you see of gospel music of the past, and what do you see to the present, and what do we see gospel music in the future? Because me growing up, I was dropped off at my late maternal aunt's apartment in the Bronx. She would play gospel music all day, from James Cleveland to Shirley Caesar to all of
yeah,
the gospel choirs and to all of the gospel quartets. And I've been listening to all types, especially gospel choirs, as well
right.
as other singers who were in the contemporary gospel when we had the Edwin Hawkins singers, as well as the Winans. And we get
Mine is
into
big.
today, we see the new artist Lecrae. What do you see of gospel music as it was in the past as we go to the present? And what do we see in the future?
So let's break it down for past specifically. One thing that I had seen now that's different than it was back then was that back then there was a lot more dedication to the craft and a lot more dedication to the community. Like for instance, back then when you look at some of like the heavy hitters that came out of the gospel era, like Whitney Houston and these powerhouse type vocalists, one thing about it it was because since we didn't have really much as a community back then, all we had was each other and all we had was church. And so then what you see is constant practice. Like even during my old days of church, there was choir practice at other big churches that we would be cool with probably 3, 4 times a week, twice on Sunday. So anyone who's involved with church culture, like understand that that was something that was big, right? And so then out of this dedication and out of this constant practice, right? Then you had music singers come out during that time, and then they will come and blow the world away because the world had not seen this type of work ethic towards a genre before. People did not see that. And so then now, like, as far as presently, we don't have that as much because one, I think there has been, I feel like there's been a divide within the church for quite some time. There has been a major divide within the church. Some people talk about church pain. Some people talk about not having time, whatever the case may be, especially with the youth or the youth not resonating with a lot of the messages anymore. Like because of now, there's been such a separation. We don't see as much as a church influence in the music industry, and it's literally very evident. Like when you go back, do it through a time scale, if you do a whole timeline, you look when church was involved in the industry, and then when it stopped, there is a clear, distinct musical difference. There's still remnants of it. Like some people might pick it up, Coco Jones. Um, Sometimes SZA. Lauren Hill was kind of the bridge in between now and back then. Um, Very few, right? And so then future, like as far as right now, we're in like this limbo state. Now, future wise, uh, I have an optimistic viewpoint and I have a kind of like a nihilist viewpoint. My optimistic version of what possibly could happen is that our relationship with the black church ends up remending in a more healthy way. And with that being now the case, right, we will be able to readapt a lot of those original church um, lifestyles that we used to have, like church dedication towards the craft, right? After reviewing what we believe in, after we review what type of hurt happened in this area, right? When we come together and actually sit down and let each other know what could possibly come from this by bringing the church back together and such like that, I see this beautiful. I see this beautiful future with it. However, if that does not happen, I think as far as the other aspect of what could possibly come to pass, I slowly start to see the church influence specifically in everyday music completely go out if we never mend that bridge, if we never end up going back into, and which I would hate to see. Even with me, like, I know for a fact, even though I do not make church music, I just am going to I can't get rid of the influence that church has put on me, right? So therefore I'm going to put it in my music, right? So there's going to be a few eggs here and there as far as new artists coming in, putting in the music, but unless we rebuild and reevaluate the black church, you know what I'm saying? I feel unfortunately like it will kind of cease to exist in the everyday music, if that makes sense.
Right. As a church deacon, bringing in the church back in the late 70s, I mentioned James Cleveland and Shirley Caesar.
Right.
And I mentioned contemporary gospel, the Edwin Hawkins singers, and so many others. And at my church, they would sing, regular church music, whether it's soprano or, opera
Yeah.
thing. But when
Yeah.
contemporary moved in, that's when we see the divide. There's some people that may not like contemporary gospel, whether it's Kirk Franklin or Yolanda Adams or Donnie
Yeah.
McClurkin. Some people will prefer the old school classic gold,
Uh-huh.
the quartets and Shirley Caesar. And then you had the Mighty Clouds of Joy and, of course, James Cleveland, just to name a few. But
Right.
once again, you have that continental divide. Not everybody is into contemporary, and not everybody is into the old gospel. So me
Yeah.
growing up, I'm kind of like a blend of everything. That's something that people will like, whether it's young or old, whether it's
Right.
classic gospel gold or contemporary. It's just something that music that brings the best of us. It unites us. It
It does.
inspires us. It moves us. So whatever type of gospel music that you're listening to, we're all serving the same God. And to me, I kind of
Right.
like, everything that's, everything, in any language, we all serve the same God. So whether
Right.
you have someone like Martha Menezes, she's white, but hey, she serves, the same God and everything.
Right.
So no matter what your taste is, we're all serving God, whether you're
Yeah.
black or white, anybody. And you
Higher
have to bring
purpose.
the message, and that's what music ministry is all about.
It is. It is 100% is. That's beautiful.
Now, what made you move from Grand Rapids, Michigan to Newark, New Jersey? Because I have some relatives in Newark.
Okay, so at the time, so what I was doing is I was actually chasing this possible opportunity musically. I was reached out by a friend of mine, and I went out there, and I was trying to put some things together on my own. You know what I'm saying? Now, since then, I did take a trip back here, back to Grand Rapids. So yeah, I am in Grand Rapids, and I will be coming back to Jersey soon. But the culture out there in Jersey is beautiful. The culture out there, there was a lot of musical aspects that I was picking up while I was in Jersey, and that whole trip really was a teaching moment. I didn't even realize what was happening, but I was being taught about so much about a life, about this system. I was able to see real life what homeless go through. I was able to see real life how this society treats the less fortunate. I was for like that's what a lot of that trip to Jersey had had became to be of. Even though things didn't work out the way that I thought it was going to work out, everything worked out the way it was supposed to work out. Everything 100% worked out. So right now I'm taking a little recuperating break right now, making sure I got everything back before I end up going back and hitting New Jersey. And it's close to New York. Jersey was close to New York, of which I also made connections too. You know what I'm saying? New York is a beautiful place, especially for this genre of music, to be able to connect with. There's a lot of connections out there. So that's what led me out there initially at first.
Yeah, so like I said, I've been to Newark many times back in the 80s and taking that PATH train to New Jersey. That was something I always dreamed of. So when I was in social studies and on the eighth grade, they talked about urban studies. And I see the picture of the PATH train. And me growing up, I had a MTA subway map. So that
Yeah.
way I get around the whole subway system. My late mother never took it seriously because she gets lost when she takes the train.
You
Back in
can.
the days, you can talk to a subway clerk and say, "Where can I get to 28th Street?" And the people said, "Take the N or the R local to 28th Street and Broadway." That's it.
Yeah.
Sometimes she'll get lost, but her late parents and her siblings, they take mass transportation. Same thing with her
Right.
in-laws from the first marriage. They get around mass transportation. It's just that
Mm,
my late mother, she would take that car and go speed it up all the way down to the either the FDR Drive or Henry Hudson Parkway, West Side Highway,
right. Right.
you name it. So, that's her baby. She doesn't usually take public transportation. She'll take the car going I-95 all the way to the GWB
Man.
and every place. So I get
Wow.
around public transportation. During my travels, I would go take PATH train to New Jersey, and if I'm visiting cousins in Philly, there's a SEPTA subway system, as well as
Yeah.
DC Metro. I get around, so you get used to it. But once you get the hang of it, now you realize which line to take to that destination. Boom, there it is.
That was big for me. Like that's the big that I guess that was the big difference between Grand Rapids and Jersey. Like Grand Rapids, everything is driving distance. Everything. So like you can't walk and you can't take the bus. But I bought my car when I was like 19, so I had no concept of that. There's no when I came to New York. The first off, we don't do cars. There's no cars in New York. You better walk. You better get on the bus. Or you could take a taxi, but taxis just as slow, right? So that was a huge thing that like being able to memorize where you're going using the public transportation and different stops and such. That was big. That's something big that you gotta learn when you go on the east side.
Now, today you're a music producer and the founder of Royal Bloodline. Please share with our audience What is your company or record labels about?
So my company and my record label, Royal Bloodline, is really about making sure that record labels kind of stand in this new righteousness and dedication towards their artist. Now, the concept of it is once you stand up to be an individual who is very integrity based and have a lot of dedication and righteousness within yourself, right? A lover of music and your community based, we begin to. Well, I'm really talking about myself because I'm the only person who signed to RBL as far as right now, as I'm getting things built up. But that's those characteristics, being community based, being very pro melanin, pro black, right? Pro Palestine, right? Pro protect black women, protect children, protect good men. Like that's kind of the aura that we surround our good music about. Right, that's the baseline of what this royal bloodline is. Because when you do that and you separate yourself from the system and you separate yourself from all the negative aspects of what life can throw at you, and you still decide to still stand strong within your 10 toes, you are now royal blood. Like you are, you have elevated yourself to now you're part of a kingdom. You know what I'm saying? So
Hmm.
that's where that comes from. Like the concept of meeting people who standing in integrity, meeting people who standing in righteousness, meeting people who have a different viewpoint of helping the people who are in need. Right, a different a viewpoint of helping the community out, and in whatever way you could think of. That is what Royal Bloodline stands for. That's what I stand for, making sure that we put our people first,
Hmm.
making sure we make sure unity. That huge thing. Royal Bloodline is big on unity, right? We don't this discourse within our own community, right? We have the powers to be able to cinch that out, and I mean we, I mean the people who are currently of this generation, your generation, the generation in between. Like we have that power, So when we organize that and be able to put it on a name on it, that's where Royal Bloodline came to be. So right now it's really just me and my brother who helped co-design this label, and like how we run it is basically, how a lot of record labels, they like to screw artists over. You know what I'm saying? So you at most you probably could be looking at a 30-70, like a 30% yours, 70% label, and part of that 30 that's going to you is going to your management, your manager's dog, your man, like whatever the case, whatever they have written on that paper. Over here, how I plan on doing it is I don't see nothing beyond a 90-10. In other words, artists get 90% of their work. We just work on the marketing and getting it out there. Type. You know how the masters
Hmm.
work. I'm not, I'm so like that independent freedom with the management and backing and experience of a label. You know what I'm saying? Like that's kind of how the concept of which RBL is supposed to be built on. You know what I'm saying? Still giving artists freedom, but it's with uniform.
Hmm.
Like people get to be part, of the label, and that comes with a lot of things. You know what I'm saying? So, but it's geared around making sure that the artist is taken care of before anything else,
Hmm.
and not screwing them over with fake, with redefined line signatures. No, none of that. Like, why are we still doing that? Why are we
Right.
still doing that?
Hmm.
And that's how you screw artists over. So
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up because, like I said earlier, I'm reaching out to some independent artists who are not on the major record labels or were on the major record labels. Many of these record labels, like Sony and Warner Brothers, they have been merging before the pandemic and during the pandemic, and now we're in the post pandemic. And now many of the artists who have their own record labels is not like the same back then when you had
right,
Motown and Stax and Philadelphia International and
right,
Solar Records and TK Records. Most of them, they were with major record labels, and then they went on its own by themselves by creative control. Like Stax, for example, they were picked up by Atlantic Records at the end of the
Wow.
at the end of the 50s. That I didn't know. And then as I read about the history of Stax, when after Otis Redding was killed in a plane crash, the only thing that I didn't hear of that Atlantic Records sold its record label to Warner Brothers. And then that's the only thing that we didn't know about.
Oh
And
wow.
then by the time when Stax left Atlantic Records, they went on its own with major backing from Gulf and Western, which is the company, parent company of Paramount Pictures. So then in 1968, they had some new artists, Johnny Taylor, and then their own house band, Booker T and the MGs, and then Isaac Hayes had,
Yeah.
went from being musician to his own singing,
Yeah.
and he had his own, and they have stayed with itself until unfortunately they went Chapter 11 for bankruptcy,
Yeah.
and then went out of business. But before that, like Motown, Stax had went out in Hollywood to get their foot in the door to do movie and TV. And by that time, it was too late. They filed Chapter 11 for bankruptcy
Yeah.
and closed its doors. But for Philadelphia International, they stayed in the community, for the community, by the community.
And that's
And
how you
when
still
I was in Philadelphia in 2007 visiting my paternal cousin, I looked and said, oh, Universal Charter Schools. That's what Gamble and Huff, they had
Okay,
founded.
right.
And they
Right.
had restored the community. So that's what they did. They didn't do it like Motown and Stax went out to Hollywood. Philly International stayed in the community.
Right.
And that's what they did. When they did the LP, Let's Clean Up the Ghetto, proceeds from that LP went to restore the neighborhood.
Wow.
Everything that
That's
has
how you
to,
do it.
that's how you do it.
That's how you
Ain't,
do that. That's exactly how you're supposed to do that. That's
and I,
beautiful. Then so. In fact, now I'm glad that you said that. I'm gonna write some of this down for to look up because I like their methods. I like their methods. That's how I see RBL running specifically. Proceeds going to like shows. Now we're giving back to community giveaway, and these don't be small lump sums of money. Like when you do like an event, you do like a concert, they're paying you six figures. You can give that back to the community somehow. You can do that. Like it's not possible because you just told me it was done already. There's already been examples of it being done. So, um, no, it's wonderful. That's crazy. I did not know. Thank you for telling me that. That's wild.
yes, because I did my research. I'm looking through the record's history. And I was like, wow, it's like they doing some other things, like those other two labels that I just mentioned.
Yeah.
They got into Hollywood, promoting their singers and everything. And some of the other labels, they stayed in the community. They don't go nowhere. They think about the community first
Right.
and
Right.
everything. Now, I've interviewed Terrence Shepard, and he's the CEO of Flashy Money Records in Stamford, Connecticut, and he's independent as well. Now, I've talked to him about what his record label is doing by promoting and getting new artists out there. His record label is concerned of today's hip hop and R&B and also Latin music. What are you looking for in regards to marketing and promoting your record label?
I can say what am I looking for? So I'm just gonna list like the things that I do to promote my record label, and then like the things that I'm planning on doing as well. As far as we do a lot of like dancing based materials, like we dance a lot over here, RBL. So I post a lot of dance videos going to like like my TikTok and soon to be on my Instagram. Community events. I would love to get because mind you, we're still in the beginning phases of RBL. Like I'm still putting together. So doing community events is a huge way I want to end up promoting and getting artists inbound. Doing park events where we're catering for the food already. So the food already paid for. You give black people free food, they gonna come to whatever. You know what I'm saying? That's how church work. That's how a lot of times church work. You know, we have food downstairs, right? Very simple. Inviting out professional speakers. You know what I'm saying? Inviting out community speakers of which who have actually like a message to say. You know, before we get the music rolling in. You know what I'm saying? Having different types of community games already prepared. That's kind of how I see myself promoting it, and even more community dance competitions and community competitions. Period. You know, mending that relationship between ourselves. That's how you are supposed. At least how I plan on promoting a record label that's actually about the community. You know, because once you do that, once you allow yourself to be able to put together events that fixes the relationship within people that's within their own community, you begin to build a higher status, not only for yourself but for your community and your community members. You know what I'm saying, around you. So dancing, community events, and then college events, like not just going to like neighborhoods and such like that, but like one thing that we're gonna be big on is going to HBCUs, right? Local, not private schools, local colleges, basically. You go into those schools as well, and make sure that we are touching every part of ground, every ground. You know what I'm saying? And that's where the youth is too. Like that's where the this whole this whole race is about the youth and making sure that we protect the youth in every form of fashion. And that's where they at. The educated youth that's already on path of which we're trying to get them to, right? They're at these colleges. So that's how I juggle trying to, you know, bring people in together as far as for RBL and what we do to try to market. Like what we try to do to try to get us out there. You know what I'm saying?
Now, unlike Motown and Stax and Billy International and Solar and TK and T-Neck Records and yes, Bad Boy Entertainment, they have their own formats.
Right.
Now, on your record label, what is the format of your record label?
Like, and when you mean format, do you mean like the signing? Like, what do you mean specifically about format? Like,
Is it kind of like hip hop or today's R&B, or is it gospel or jazz?
beautiful, beautiful question. Actually, so the format is primarily hip hop and rap, but we sign artists. It's centered around R&B and rap, but we actually very multi-genre based because hip hop and rap has so many different influences where it's important, I feel like, to bring in those influences in house. So for instance, we have heavy R&B influence. So then we would sign like R&B artists and producers. We R&B. I'm actually, now that you say that in this way, I'm glad you asked this question. The format, we sign artists and we're heavy on signing producers as well. Like we have just as many as, at least the goal is to get as many producers as there are artists. Even sometimes producers more than artists. So then when we go out and we find a new artist, we'll be able to pair them with a producer any genre that they can automatically kind of link up with and be able to work with automatically, right? So first off is hip hop and R&B, and then you do have gospel aspect, and then you do have I love I love specifically blues. I do want to, even though art, rhythm, and blues includes blues, blues by itself is a very distinct genre that I would love to touch on and actually sign specific blues genre based artists as well as a little bit country. A little bit country, not too much country, but a little bit. You know what I'm saying? To make sure we get that in there. So it's multi genre based, but it is centered around the culture and the mix of genres through hip hop
Mm,
specifically,
okay,
and
wow.
funk, any type of
Yes.
and funk. And we need that.
Yes.
That
we
is
need we need
we
that.
need that. It's missing. It's 100% missing. There's not enough funk in this everyday music genre. No, we're bringing that back. We are bringing that back.
Yes, yes, indeed. Now, here's a question that I always ask my guests: living or dead, which artist that you wish you wanted to meet? Whether you want to sign that artist, whether it could be major artist or independent.
Man, if I were to meet, okay, so I'm gonna give you one dead. I'm gonna give you one alive. Dead. Um, to be in the same room. I know I say this often, but to be to meet Tupac for me, even though he's not a singer, I'll give you a singer too. Michael Jackson, if I were to specifically a singer, but those two, they had a dedication to this craft that was second to none. Having a simple conversation with Michael would change the alteration of my life. Probably, I don't know. Maybe it would be calm. There's no way of finding out. Um, and the reason why I said Pac first is because his dedication. It was almost like he had a dedication to his community prior to him having a dedication to a rap. And I think there's a huge reversal of that in everyday life when it comes to this culture, right? It shouldn't be like that. It shouldn't. People should be very community. But his mom was a Black Panther, right? Well, his mama was a Black Panther. Had him in done gave him all his genes. You know what I'm saying? His pro black genes, like so that. As far as living and dead is one of those two, and then living, Lauren Hill, Lauren Hill, cause this woman changed my life. I remember, and it was Sister Act 2. There's this scene where she's on the piano with her friend, and I can't remember the specific song that she's singing. It's an old church hymn. And it takes me there every time. I could put on the scene right now. I'd have to pause it and breathe because her vocal ability as well as her pro blackness is second to none. It's second to none. So that's who I meet living to dead.
Right. You know, I'm glad you brought up Lauren Hill because I only knew her when she was a member of the Fugees, with
Right.
Wyclef and Braz. And I didn't know that Lauren Hill started out in that movie Sister Act 2. But before she started in Sister Act 2, VH1 had a program called Before They Were Stars. And I was
Right.
looking at the clip and I see Lauren Hill started out on As the World Turns on CBS Daytime. I was like, wow, I did
Oh
not
yeah.
know that. So
Wow.
I'm looking at the clip and I see Lauren Hill acting. And I was like, oh, so Lauren Hill was on As the World Turns and then went on to stardom to Sister Act 2. And then she went on to major superstardom with the Fugees. And then she had her solo LP, which won her 5 Grammy Awards. Let me tell you, she was Afrocentric, no matter what.
That is an Afrocentric woman. That is a beautiful black woman. Oh my goodness. She did that. She has so many accomplishments under her belt where it's almost elusive. Like you look back at like certain records and you look back at certain achievements and it's like, how is it possible that you even accumulated all this in your time? But there's people who do it. And she one of them. And she living
Yes.
long, healthy, and well.
Yes, yes, yes. Now, here on the Black Soul Music Experience podcast, I always ask my guests who are the top 10 R&B black artists of all time. So here's
Okay.
how it works. We started like a top 10 countdown. We start at number 10, who was the best singer but didn't get that much recognition. Then we get to the top 5. We find out who's the best top 5 singers of all time. If that singer had top 10 number 1 hits, that artist received a Grammy or American Music Award or Soul Train Award or BET Award, that artist received albums that were platinum, double platinum, triple platinum, that artist performed on American Bandstand or Soul Train or the Midnight Special or Saturday Night Live or Solid Gold, or that they had their primetime special, whether it's on CBS, NBC, or ABC, or that they had that special on PBS during Pledge Month, or that
Right.
they had their live concert special on HBO or Showtime. So, Ramses, my brother, we're going to
Yes.
put you to the test and we'll give you your top 10. And if you get stuck at anything, I'll help you out.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Okay. Who should be at number 10?
So, oh man, I'm look. We can go. I feel like top 10 probably not talked about artists enough. First off, I'll put Sade.
Ah, yes, Sade. Yes, she came on the scene back in January 1985. I saw her music video on New York Hot Tracks on ABC 7 New York with her debut Hang On to Your Love. She has a mixture of smooth jazz and R&B. She has some hits including Is It a Crime, The Sweetest Taboo,
That
Nothing
one.
Can Come Between Us. And then in 2000, she switched gears. She mixed it up with some lovers rock and everything. So even though she didn't get that much recognition, but we love her music, smooth
Right.
jazz, with a
Right.
little bit of everything. So we'll put Sade at number 10. All right, who should be at number 9?
Now, I say this because I believe her legacy was cut too short. I would say actually Aaliyah. I do believe she was renowned here. She was renowned at her time, but because of that was so much controversy that was happening between her and Kelly, as well as her not being able to live out her full legacy past the age. What was she died 23? I believe she is when she passed. Um,
She died in 2001.
2001. She was probably 22 at the time. Then probably she was around that age. So I say Aaliyah because she had, as far as R&B, she had with her and Timbaland and even Missy coming together make R&B bangers the way that she was making them. Because I have a pretty extensive list. I'm looking in. Aaliyah's a pretty big name, but I would say probably Aaliyah at 9 compared to the rest of these names on here.
Okay, well, Leah, as you mentioned, she just had a few hits, but although she was getting ready to climb superstardom, but unfortunately her death was cut short from that plane crash after they did the music
Yeah.
video. The last music video was Rock the Boat. And that song would be playing at all the different nightclubs on Friday night. Her debut single, Back and Forth with R. Kelly. And yes, she had teamed up with Timbaland and Missy Elliott. She had a string of hits. And yes, in case you may not know, both Sade and Aaliyah are on the same birthday, January 16th.
I did not know that.
Yep. I
Wow.
Yes, I did season 2 on my podcast. I did the artist profile birthdays,
Okay.
and I did two artists on the same birthday, Sade and Aaliyah. So we mentioned Sade, smooth jazz, didn't get them much recognition, and number 9, Aaliyah. She was getting ready to go climb to that superstardom, but she was
Hmm.
cut short. So rest in peace to the one and only Aaliyah.
Yes,
All
sir.
right, who should be at number 8?
Now, 8. I feel like this is an artist that should be put in certain conversations as far as mega starness, but it's not. I say James Brown.
Ah, the godfather of soul, Mr. James Brown. He,
I don't. I saw oftentimes I do hear the names like Prince and Michael Jackson and such like that, of which they were all part of that era. In fact, I was just watching the video of James Brown calling out Michael Jackson, bringing him on stage, and then Michael Jackson telling James Brown to call out Prince, right? And so, just in that right there, a lot of should tell people that James Brown was on definitely that same scale, even though he has hits. He has hits. It's just a matter of people don't talk about him as much. But I remember the reason why he's specifically on my list is because back when I was dancing in middle school in these dance competitions, I had mimicked like Michael Jackson a lot. There was another dancer who mimicked James Brown often. So people naturally had like pinned us like against each other. It was cool. But his legacy was living through him too. Like there was someone who was actively dropping, doing the splits, popping back up, you know what I'm saying? Like that type of influence had a lot of power when it came to the R&B and funk back then, but people don't really talk about that often.
Right.
So,
Yes, so
yeah.
we'll put James Brown, the godfather of soul, the hardest working man in show business, Mr. Dynamite. He did it all, and he kept up with the times, from the late 50s to the 60s and 70s. And yes, you mentioned Michael Jackson and Prince. They were both influenced by James Brown. Not only that, hip hop were influenced by James Brown, best known for his riffs and sampling stuff. So when he takes some of the beats and all the drums, hip hop would sample
Yeah.
some of the stuff from James Brown. So he kept up with the times. Not only that, he was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the first one for the class of 1986. He was inspired by everybody. They even did a movie about him that's had the late Chadwick Boseman, who played James Brown. And yes, Dan Aykroyd and John Belushi, he had them on, the Blues Brothers. They were all influenced by him. So everybody were influenced by James Brown. And yes, Hammer too. So we don't want to leave him out.
Yeah.
I saw Hammer in the music video with James Brown. Everything. So we all seen dance, the splits, and everything. Everybody wants to do that fast thing and everything.
Yeah,
So,
little foot thing, yeah.
yep. So
That's him.
nobody couldn't touch him. Yes.
Nope.
So, yep. So rest in peace to the godfather of soul, Mr. James Brown.
R.I.P.
All right. Who should be at number 7?
Who we got already? We got
We got,
Sade, we got
uh-huh,
Aaliyah, we
uh-huh.
got
JB.
James Brown.
Mm-hmm.
So right after that, I would say, even though we talked about him a little earlier, I don't amongst guitarists often I don't hear him enough. I would say BB King.
The king of the blues, B.B.
Right there.
King. Yes, he's
Listen.
best known for his guitar, Lucille. So every time when I see B.B. King perform, he got to bring his guitar, Lucille, with him. So yes, he's best known
And
for not only he didn't get that string of hits back in the 50s or 60s, but when the 70s came around, he crossed over to major black radio, including he teamed up with Gamble and Huff and Dave Crawford, MFSB, breakout hit called Friends and Philadelphia. And back in the 70s, he made that top 10 list. And then by the late 80s,
yeah.
many singers like Eric Clapton and many other blues artists, they were influenced by B.B. King. So when you hear that guitar, let me tell you, he played it real good. And he made some cameo appearances in the movies, with Dan Aykroyd in the movie Spies Like Us and then Blues
Yeah.
Brothers 2000. And on television, he made guest appearance on an episode of Sanford and Son on NBC and an episode of Sesame Street on PBS. So he was around and everything. So, and yes, he had his own club in Midtown Manhattan, BB
BB.
King's Club and Grill. I never get a chance to get to any of his clubs, but every time I walk down West 42nd Street between 7th and 8th, Times Square, I always think about that place. I never get a chance to get it before it closed its doors. So I always think about his legend, the guitar,
Yeah.
and everything.
Yeah.
So rest in peace to the king of the blues, B.B. King. Well, all right, who should be at number 6?
6. I would put right here as far as influence, but because now we're kind of getting to like they were rewarded often. Now we're kind of getting in that area. I would say Lauren Hill. Now I hear because I don't hear enough like specifically like male rappers talk about her often as much as she should. Lauren, like we went through her her influence with the Fugees and then her dropping her EP that she did a live performance I believe for BET. Was it BET? It was not too long after the Usher dedication. She had got up and her her swag is still untouchable. She is such a elegant woman. She went and then I believe she sang a song with her son. So like her legacy in that manner, people don't praise enough for me personally. I think that she definitely needs to be talked about a lot more.
Yes, so Lauren Hill, we put her at number 6, as we mentioned earlier. Once the member of the Fugees, then went solo with her LP, The Miseducation of Lauren Hill. It had
Yep.
a mixture of everything, singing and rapping, whether it's hip hop or reggae. Won 5 Grammys, Best Album of the Year, Best Solo Artist. And yes, we mentioned she was in the movie Sister Act 2, and I mentioned she was started out on As the World Turns. So yes, we haven't talked about her. I know she dropped out of sight, but her music was so powerful, Afrocentric, no cussing. That's the most important thing.
Right.
Everything turns into gold. So, yes, Lauren Hill, we put her at number 6.
Right.
All right, we're up to number 5.
Perfect. Marvin Gaye.
The one and only Marvin Gaye started out in Motown Records, started out being a smooth, and then we got to the later 60s with his top 10 hits, How Sweet It Is to Be Loved by You, I've Heard It Through the Grapevine, number 1 hit, duets with the late
Man.
Tammy Terrell. But then when 1971 came along, his breakout LP, What's Going On, his debut single in 1971, number 1 on Billboard's Soul Singles charts back in May of 1971 for 5 weeks. His album went gold. His follow up hits, including Mercy, Mercy Me and Inner City Blues. That was a concept album that have
Yeah, it
dealt
was.
with dealing with police brutality, dealing with the environment, dealing with what's been going on in the black community. And when Berry Gordy found out that he was going to do a protest album, Berry Gordy was furious. He was saying, "Why are you doing this protest album? You're supposed to be love songs." But when the What's Going On single came out, everything turned to gold, and the rest
Yeah.
was history. Number 1
Yeah.
hit for 5 weeks, concept album. He talked about everything: the war in Vietnam, climate change, police
Yeah, he did.
brutality, what's been happening, urban decay in the black community. So
He was a
it's been a
revolutionist.
major success. He had other hits, Let's Get It On, Live at the London Palladium, and then his last album, Midnight Love with Sexual Healing, number 1 back in December of 1982 for 10 weeks. And he finally got
Ridiculous.
his Grammy and an American Music Award. And his last appearance was the Motown 25th Anniversary Special.
Yep.
And yes, he did the national anthem. So he did it his way. So rest in peace to Grammy and
Rest in
American Music
peace.
Award winner and Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductee Marvin Gaye. All right, who
Man.
should be at number 4?
Number 4, Luther Vandross.
Ooh, Luther Vandross. New York's own Luther Vandross.
Man, Luther.
Yep, he started out with the group Change and then went on solo with Never Too Much, Don't You Know That? And his version of A House Is Not a Home. And then he had other hits, including Stop to Love, There's Nothing Better Than Love, and Love Power. And he's best remembered for doing commercial jingles back in the day. But let me share something with you. I'll be watching Sesame Street on PBS.
Right.
And then I was watching an episode on YouTube. And then I saw Luther. I mean, that's Luther? He was in that group on an episode of Sesame Street. I said,
Oh,
wow.
wow.
He was a little slimmer back then before he became Big Luther.
Right,
But
right.
then I was looking at his face again. Wow, Luther? I did not know that he was on an episode of Sesame
Wow.
Street back then.
Wow, you made it.
They were
That's
singing
crazy.
they were singing a song called Count to 20. And I remember that. So then I didn't recognize it was Luther. So I only knew him from commercial jingles and all the hits that we have mentioned. So rest in
Wow.
peace to the one and only Luther Vandross, and we'll put him at number
4.
4. All right, who should be at number 3?
Stevie Wonder.
Yes, the one and only Stevie Wonder. Started out at 12 years old with his hit Fingertips, then went on to other hits, including For Once in My Life, My Sharia Moore.
Yeah.
And then he got into the 70s. He had creative control, did his own thing. He had songs including Living for the City, You Haven't Done Nothing, Isn't She Lovely? And then our anthem, Happy Birthday, from the LP Hotter Than July. He dedicated that song in honor of the late Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.,
Yeah.
singer, songwriter, producer, arranger. He won a Grammy Award, American Music Award, inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Academy Award winner, and an activist. He went to Washington to make Dr. King Day a national holiday. Now, you know the Republicans
I
don't
did
be
not
signing
know that.
no. Yep. Now you do know that Republican parties don't sign no Negro holidays.
Right.
And then
Right.
when I was watching the news, when I saw history that President Reagan signed that bill to make Dr. King Day a national holiday. Now there are some black legislative officials wanted it on his actual birthday. And then we made the third Monday national holiday. That was 1983. We had to wait till 3 years to make it a national
Right.
holiday.
That's how it is in America. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Wow, that is beautiful.
He participated in USA for Africa's We Are the World. He was an activist, whether it's apartheid, South Africa, you name it. Stevie Wonder had did it all. So that's the one and only genius, Mr. Stevie
Absolute
Wonder.
genius.
Yep. All right, we're up to number 2.
2, Whitney Houston.
Yes, the one and only Whitney Houston, coming out of East Orange, New Jersey, the daughter of the late Cissy Houston, cousin of Dionne Warwick. Started out in the church. She made her debut hit with the late Teddy Pendergrass, Hold Me in Your Arms, and then had her breakout album, self-titled LP, sold over 1 million copies in print, had top 10 hits, You Give Good Love, How Will I Know, Saving All My Love, and the remake of The Greatest Love of All. She won a Grammy Award, an American Music Award, and she's been inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for the class of 2020. Yes, there have been some negative things about Whitney, marrying
Yeah.
Bobby Brown and everything. So
Bobby.
all of that.
Man.
Yep. So, Whitney, that beautiful voice, the princess
She
of pop.
she had a voice that changed the world. I think when people heard Whitney's voice, her influence, especially on the pop, that R&B pop mix genre, is second to none. Every time I meet someone who wants to learn how to sing, or anytime I met like a church individual who wanted that powerhouse song, first name it always went back to Whitney. It always went back to Whitney. So most definitely, she deserved the number two
Yes.
spot easily.
All right. All right. Who should be at number one?
The number one to ever walk this earth easily. This is not even a conversation. Is Michael Jackson. Michael, like that's right there. I'll put this man. If you want to separate his pop influence, just his R&B. You just go listen to all his love R&B songs. One, that man was desperately going through it with Diana. So like you go listen to all the songs that he actually put towards Diana and all his other love interests. He was a musical genius. And then he also knew how to make people move. That is a very hard thing to do, and then move with them. Like that I was thinking about Michael. Like he was able to not only get you to move your body, he moved his own body to his own music in ways that would blow your mind. And then he immortalized himself that way. Like
Right.
he with him showing his undying passion and love through his art. He created a version of himself of which now can never be. My grandkids is gonna know who Michael Jackson is. You know what I'm saying? Very few artists can do that. So
Yes, the king of pop, he done it all. He started out with his brothers when they made their debut, 1969. And, they had number one hits, I Want You Back, The Love You Save, ABC, Dancing Machine, Never Can Say Goodbye. They were on Motown from 1969 to 1975 and then switched over to CBS. At the same time,
okay.
they had their own variety series. They brought Randy along with him while
Yeah.
Jermaine was still at Motown. They brought the sisters, Janet and then Rebe and Latoya and everybody. They had their own variety series back then during the summer. And then they started writing their own songs. And then Michael did a few solos when he was with Motown, two
Yeah.
solo LPs, and then over to Epic Records. Oh my goodness. 3, 4 solo LPs nonstop. Breakthrough albums, diamond platinum, triple platinum, number one hits back to back. And I was watching the American Music Awards on January 16th, 1984. Michael
Wow.
swept the night. He had won everything: pop, soul, soft rock, and even he had an American Music Award of Merit. Let me tell you, when I was watching the Motown 25th anniversary special, he was doing that moonwalk. He had on them sparkle socks, the sparkle glove. He had the hat, everything. My late mother would say, "What is he doing?" And
Okay, so she didn't like him for real. She liked Michael.
yeah, well, when he was younger, and I still have the Jackson 5 Greatest Hits LP. That was my
Wow.
Christmas gift.
Wow.
1971, I still kept it in good faith, preserved, everything, all clean, no scratches whatsoever. I kept that in
Hold on
good
to that.
faith. Do you know how much it is when I go to these record stores in the village? I've seen some of the LPs that they sell for cash. Do you know how much it is, what we're costing? It will
How much?
cost between 30 to $100. That's how much it will preserve and
That's
everything.
still that's a lot for one disc. That
Yeah.
is that is it's worth it. To be honest with you, I think it's worth more. I feel like you can if it's in mint condition, that's worth 1,000.
Yep.
I'll pay that.
And not only that, they had their own cartoon show on ABC Saturday morning.
Yeah.
And yes, he was in the movie version of The Wiz. And yes, he had made some cameo appearances. We mentioned James Brown. Michael Jackson was influenced by James Brown. Just like so many
Right.
of today's R&B singers, Chris Brown, Justin Timberlake, Christina Aguilera, Britney Spears, they were all influenced by Michael Jackson. And I was at the Michael Jackson party celebration. I was at the Herbert Holler Freedom Party at the Le Poisson Rouge in the village.
Right.
On the first Friday of August, they had the Michael Jackson celebration. Let me tell you, I've seen some people dressing up as Michael Jackson. You've seen some of the guys dressing up, whether they had that Jerry curl or the loafers. Someone that got that, that red leather jacket with the zippers and that Beat It video. And then you have some of the ladies got that hat. They just go like
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
And
yeah,
like the
yeah.
sparkle glove and the sparkle socks. I'm telling you, they were all dressing up like Michael. So I was there for the occasion because I did season 2 of my podcast. I started off with the birthday, started off with Michael Jackson, and then ended off with season 2 with Prince. So
Wow, yeah.
I've seen so many people dressing up, for that birthday party celebration.
Yeah,
Yep.
he
So
has so many. See, I think he's the most dressed like pop star when it comes to Halloween. Like he's an official Halloween costume, which very few artists get on that. When you think about it, that's not something that comes up often. So yeah, his influence is crazy. Like, you went down the whole list, untouchable. Very few
right.
people have that influence.
American Music Award winner, Grammy Award winner, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductee for the class of 1997 with his brothers, and 2001 solo. It's always everything he turns into gold. So rest
Everything
in
turns.
peace to the king of pop, Mr. Michael Jackson. Well, Ramses, thank you so much for being here on the Black Soul Music Experience podcast. It's been a pleasure talking with you. Thank you so much for all of your memories and continued success and good luck to your CEO endeavors. And please
Thank
come
you.
on back when you have those updates and everything. We love to hear some artists and entrepreneurs like you.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. You're my first ever interview podcast that I've ever been on. So this experience is a one of one, 100% one of one. I love your music knowledge. Like you've impressed me multiple times with how much you knew about certain artists. So I'm definitely coming back. We're gonna come back when we get a lot of things more figured out and more success stories to be able to give you. I can't wait. I can't wait. I enjoyed it.
Oh, alrighty. Now, where can we follow you for any upcoming events?
Yes. So you can follow me on TikTok. So my TikTok handle is Ramses999. And then my Instagram is is also Ramses. If you just types in Ramses, you should be able to follow me right then and there. And then all of my socials are connected to my other socials. So if you find one, then you'll find the other.
Okay, thank you so much. Download all the artists that we have talked about on this edition of the Black Soul Music Experience podcast. Visit iTunes.com, Spotify.com, or purchase a CD at Amazon.com. Make sure you follow Ramses. He's on TikTok under Ramses999 and follow him on Instagram under Ramses. And ladies and gentlemen, if you want to check out this episode, please subscribe by going to the link. The link is riverside.fm/studio/Samuel Wilson Jr.'s. Don't forget the at the S at the end dash studio. And yes, we will be posting this episode on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. And coming soon, we'll have this video podcast episode clip coming soon, streaming on YouTube. And for those of you who may have a hard time getting on to riverside.fm, then please subscribe and become a Patreon member. Go to patreon.com/the Black Soul Music Experience Podcast. And please pass it on. Thank you for joining me as I close out this edition of the Black Soul Music Experience. Well, that's about it for this edition of the Black Soul Music Experience Podcast. I'm Sam Wilson Jr. Thank you for joining me. And please tune in next week for an all-new episode. The Black Soul Music Experience podcast is sponsored by the support of listeners like you. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe by going to riverside.fm/studio/Samuel-Wilson Jr.'s-studio. And don't forget to check out my audio podcast episodes by becoming a member and subscribe to patreon.com/the Black Soul Music Experience podcast. And also check out my video podcast episodes by subscribing to youtube.com/the Black Soul Music Experience podcast. And please leave your comments, feedbacks, and replies by going to my Facebook homepage. Visit facebook.com/the Black Soul Music Experience podcast. And you can also tweet me on X, aka Twitter, at Sam Wilson Jr. 66. As always, parting, remember this: reach for the top and your dreams will come true, and it can happen to you. From all of us, take care, God bless. Thanks for listening, have a good week, and please be safe.